I now invite Ivrian and John O'Brien together to lay a wreath at the high altar in memory of Brian Beru. On this day, the millennium, we celebrate the Battle of Clontarf. I invite them to proceed to the high altar as the band plays Amazing Grace.
Pipe band, Amazing Grace.
You may be seated. Díomh agus tá fáilte chuig ar teampall Chríos blá clia an lá seo, an ócéad seo. Good afternoon and welcome to Christ Church Cathedral on this very special occasion when we commemorate and remember the life of Brian Beru. We remember 1,000 years of history, 1,000 years ago how history changed at the Battle of Clontarf. We welcome everyone here, in particular all the clans of Ireland, representing a millennium of history of ancient Irish families and their contribution to the life and culture of this country. We're gathered here in this cathedral church, of which I have the privilege of being dean, a church foundation that began in 1030. People in the lifetime of the Battle of Clontarf would have experienced the first building, albeit by Vikings, of the first wooden foundation of a Christian church in Dublin. Right here is the beginning of the establishment of Dublin, on this hill. And when you go down to the crypt after this commemoration, you will see in glass in the floor the original foundation of the wooden structure. The crypt is probably the oldest structure in Dublin, built around that time in 1030. So we have a living, tangible memory that we can attach ourselves to, a memory that stretches right throughout 1,000 years. Now, this cathedral foundation has experienced that history and has gone through a particular history itself. The original structure was demolished in the 12th century, and a stone structure was built in about 1170 by Diarmaid MacMurrough, affectionately known as Strongbow, whose tomb here lies in between the arches on the south aisle. Strongbow invited the then abbot of Glendalough, Lawrence O'Toole, to set up a foundation here, a church here in Dublin. He built this cathedral church and invited the canons regular of St. Augustine, the Augustinians regular, to come here and to live their monastic life here, which they did right up to the Reformation. The cathedral church that you are experiencing now has gone through many transitions and reconstructions. For those who want to do a detailed tour, that detailed tour will be presented after this commemoration and after the wine reception in the crypt by our Geoffrey McMaster, who will give you the detailed tour. But the living history of this cathedral is also the history of Ireland. As I said, this went through many transformations. In the 16th century, the roof fell in. This wall collapsed. That wall leaned. If you look at this wall from any stance, you will still see that it leans. It's perfectly safe because when it was reconstructed, flying buttresses were put in place to keep it together and to keep the roof on. You will see as you walk through the cathedral these Victorian tiles, which were put down in 1870 by George Edmund Street, the architect. There are 10,000 of these in the cathedral. There are so many different facets of the cathedral that you need to know about that I'm not going to bore you with now, but that you will experience on a tour afterwards. What is important is that this cathedral church is not just about being in a particular denomination, because this is the Church of Dublin. This is a church that has been here for 1,000 years. This church is owned by the people of Dublin. It belongs to Dublin. It's part of the living memory of Dublin. And I think it's important that the clans begin their commemoration of Brian Beru on the spot in this cathedral as part of that living memory. And I want to thank those who organise, especially the chief organiser here, who has been organised. He is the best computer person I know and the best emailer I know. And I don't know what his age is, but age means nothing to him because emails just fly one after the other. And his organisation skills are second to none. John O'Brien. I'll go on and I invite now Ivrian to come and address us.
Fáilte Riamh a Cabha. Chiefs, ministers, excellencies, reverends, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honour to be the incumbent as the O'Brien, the 32nd in direct descent from Brian Boru, in this historic millennium year, and even more so to be asked to welcome the clans along with Dr. Michael Egan, the Catholic of Clans of Ireland. First, I would like to thank Dean Dermot Dunn, Dean of Christ Church Cathedral, for allowing us to use this historic venue for the welcome of the clans, to celebrate 1,000 years to the day and time of the Battle of Clontarf. 1,000 years ago, at this very moment, they were fighting just on the north side there. Battleground. This hard-fought battle, which I will not cover because it's already been covered by historians and is quite a lengthy affair, but you can read about it, and there are lectures going on this week about it, and historians have been for years arguing about the effects of the Battle of Clontarf on Ireland after the battle. This celebration is for Ireland, and every family, Irish, Viking, Norse, Dane, or any other nationality whose ancestors fought on both sides and at which so much blood was spent on this Good Friday in 1014. Brian Boru was a man with a major vision from an early age and had very clear plans for Ireland, and during his 12 years as High King, he had achieved many of these aims towards a more unified future for the inhabitants of this island. He was generally considered as a worthy High King by most, except perhaps the Leinstermen and the O'Neills later on in his reign. And it's important to remember that just a year before Clontarf, England was conquered by the Danish King Canute, who defeated the Saxon Ethelred in battle and succeeded him to the throne in 1016. Historians say that the Danes would have never defeated Ireland, and I agree that it would have been difficult with the large number of kings and clans in Ireland, not to mention the dogged determination of the Irish. The Vikings had by this time become integrated into Irish society over the previous 200 years since their arrival on these shores in 800 AD to pillage the monasteries. Brian Boru may well have realized this also, but could obviously not take the risk of a successful Viking invasion of Ireland, which was already being planned in 1013. Brian certainly planned the battle well because he won the battle decisively, but was sadly killed with two of his sons, and this certainly affected the succession of the O'Brien kings and any future plans he would have had to build on his successful reign as Ard Righ. Brian did not expel the Vikings from Ireland, as it is so often supposed, as they had already integrated into Irish society and some had adopted the Christian religion, and their port strongholds of Galway, Limerick, Cork, Waterford and Dublin were all well established by 1014. After the battle, there were no more significant raids by Vikings, and trade was very much the order of the day. As I said, the historians are still out on the effects of this battle and the death of Brian Boru on Irish history, and probably will be for centuries to come. Many of you who are attending today will have, through your clans, been involved on one side or the other in 1014. Don't worry, all is forgiven today, Leinstermen and the O'Neills. I do hope that you will find this year-long commemoration of this famous battle both fun, informative and educational. I have to congratulate the four main core groups, Killaloe, Ballina, Cashel, Clontarf, Armagh and Waterford, for all the huge amount of effort that they have put into the last 3 years in bringing this to fruition, despite the lack of reasonable funding available, which has to a degree curtailed the overall plans. You only have to have seen the battle reenactments last weekend in Clontarf, when over 60,000 visitors turned up to watch 600 hardened soldiers slog it out to the delight of the audience. This core week in Dublin, there are events to attract everyone from lectures, banquets, exhibitions, music recitals, even this evening the replay of the Battle of Clontarf on the rugby ground, with Clontarf hosting an invited team, the Barbarians, most appropriately drawn from many different rugby teams in these islands. It will be a hard-fought battle at 5:30 this evening. On the 27th of April, there will be a memorial service in Armagh Cathedral in Northern Ireland, where Brian Beru and his son Murcutt are buried. To those visitors who have come from abroad and as far afield as Australia, America, Canada, South America, UK, Norway, Denmark, and many other areas, I warmly welcome you to Ireland, and I hope you enjoy your time in Dublin and that you will venture out to the counties where no doubt your ancestors lived and see many attractions that we have in Ireland for tourists on this core website. On the core website are all the events taking place this year throughout the country connected to King Brian Boru and the Battle of Clontarf. And for those of you who can remember it, the website is www.brianborumillennium.ie, and all the information is on that website. I would like to thank the Brian Boru Pipe and Drum Band, who have all come over especially for this festival from America to help entertain us during their visit. And you've heard them play, and they are magnificent. The drum major has been very busy and will be, I'm quite sure, for the next few days. And this morning we were up looking at this famous painting of the Battle of Clontarf by Fraser up in Marino. I've forgotten the name of the house. Casino, sorry. Well worth a visit, and tomorrow is the last day. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, it's just off the Malahide Road in North Dublin, and it's well worth seeing. The banquet on Friday the 25th of April at Clontarf Castle, which is hosted by the O'Brien clan, still have a number of tickets available, with a full evening of awards and international musical events, a silent auction and other attractions. If you would like to attend, by all means, you're more than welcome. It's not just for O'Briens, it's for any clans person who is over here who would like to attend. And the contact for that is through www.tourismireland.com, and you'll see how you can book for that. I apologize for such a long address, but hope you will all enjoy what has been planned for this historic event. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Michael Egan, the Catholic of Clans of Ireland, to say a few words. Thank you all for attending. Fulcher.
Very Reverend Dean Dunn, honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, Accorda. As Chairman of Clans of Ireland, I'm very honoured to have been asked to say a few words to you today on this very auspicious occasion. You will all now have been aware that 1,000 years ago, Cedric Silkenbeard, who was the Viking leader in Dublin, he had converted to Christianity, gave up his old sins, to use an Irish phrase, and built the cathedral on this very spot. Those of you who have had a chance to visit the crypt below will have seen, or will see later, the very foundations laid by Cedric's tradesmen. Those tradesmen, without any doubt, would have been very skilled, because there wouldn't have been too many of them around. I can't imagine that they came from Ireland. Without doubt, he would have visited himself the works on a daily basis when the cathedral was being built, and seen the ox blood being mixed with the lime mortar to give strength which would support the church above it for many centuries to come. Did you notice the ox blood? Well, you can ask the question when you go downstairs later. Just down the hill, both on the north side and on the south side, if you were here, I don't know, it's about 30 or 40 years ago, you would have seen the remains of the Viking wattle houses, and life would have gone on as normal on a daily basis there at the time the church was being built. Pigs and chickens to be fed, cattle to be bought and sold, clothes to be made and, of course, repaired. No doubt weapons would have been made and resharpened. There was plenty of fighting to be done as yet. Stock taking of plundered gold and silver from the Irish monasteries wouldn't have been a main banking activity at that time, as most of the monasteries would have been completely cleaned out of any good materials that they had, any good wealth by the year 1014. On this very day, Citric, he would have stayed very close to the cathedral on Good Friday 1014 and let the others do the fighting out in Clontarf. By nightfall, the word would have come back that the Vikings and their allies had been defeated by beru and his clansmen. The writing was on the wall for the Viking plundering and the shipping of slaves to all parts of the known world. The large sums of money available for slaves, such as learned scribes, people who could write, weren't very few and far between in Ireland at those times, so were worth an awful lot of money. And the hard-working men and women, that was all to cease, and peace seemed to settle on the land until the arrival in 1169 of the next visitors to our shores, the Normans. Then St. Lawrence O'Toole, whom the Dean has mentioned, stood outside this cathedral and asked the Normans not to burn the city. But Shin Scéile, ladies and gentlemen, you walk on hallowed ground, and thank you very much for everything, for coming.
The march by the center. Quick, march.
And just to follow on, that there will be a reception in the crypt after the band and the clans. Will everyone just process out onto the garth and down the crypt door here? And then immediately after that, those who would like a tour of the cathedral, just come back up the steps of the crypt and gather here at the screen. And the tour will begin in about 15 minutes' time. The procession out.
Pipe band. A nation once again. By the center. Quick, march.